These are our ratio proportion notes. For our first ratio, we have boys to girls, and if we knew that we had 1/2, if our ratio was 1/2, that's the same as saying that there is 1 boy to every 2 girls, so our ratio would be 1 to 2. For this proportion, if we wanted to set it up, we could say if we had 1 boy to every 2 girls, and we wanted to know how many boys would there be if we had 30 girls. The way we would set this, or the way we would solve for this, is we want to solve for x, so we just cross multiply over to get x by itself. And when we did that, we know that 30 times 1 is 30. And when we divide that by 2, so I would say, so then x would equal 30. And then when we divide that by 2, we would find that x equals 15. So if we had 30 girls, then we'd have 15 boys. So our answer to that is 15. To solve for x on this next proportion, you can see that we've got the variable in here in the denominators. To solve for x, what we would do once again is just cross multiply. Okay, so when you cross multiply, you'd get 2, and then we would say x plus 17. So we're just multiplying those two together, equals 4 times 3x plus 1. And when we solve for that, we're going to get 2x plus 34 equals 12x plus 4. And then we further solve for that, just trying to get the x's on one side. So I'm going to say minus 4 and minus 2x. So we end up with 30. Those are going to cancel out. 30 equals 10x. And when we divide off our 10, we get that x equals 3. And that would be our answer for our x. So here's our next proportion. We're talking on a map. If we know that 4 inches is proportional to 12 miles on a map, then we want to know what would 9 inches be. So we can set this up and say, this one says 9 inches, and we know that our proportion would be 4 inches to every 12 miles. So we could say for this one, if we wanted to write it out again, we could say 4 inches to every 12 miles equals 9 inches, because we know that proportion, but we're not sure about our x value yet. So for this, again, we can cross multiply. So you would end up with 4, write this out. We'll say 4x and equals 108. 108 right there. And technically your 108 is inch miles. And this would be inch. And then what we're going to do is just try to solve for our x. So what I'm going to do is just divide off my 4 inch and divide off my 4 inch. And when you do that, and you divide these two off, you're going to end up with equals 27. Now keep in mind your inches canceled out, so it's going to be 27 miles. So in 9 inches, that would equal 27 miles for this one. So up here, I would add, I just changed this up here now, it would be 9 inches is proportional to 27 miles. And that's what you can leave your answer as. For our next proportion, we have a story problem here. It says, at a company, for every 8 women employees, there are 3x plus 5 men. If there are 2 women, how many men are there? Set up a proportion and solve. So for this one, what we know is that there's 8 women to every 3x plus 5 men. In our proportion that we would set up, the other part of it that we know, if there are 2 women, how many men are there? So our proportion would be 2 women, to how many men, so we're going to leave that as x. So again, we're going to cross multiply, just like we did before, to try to solve for x. So when we set that up, we should have 8x women, and that is equal to, right here, 6x plus 10. And then we're going to just solve for x. So to do that, I'm just going to subtract off my 6x. So we end up with 2x equals 10. Divide off your 2, and x equals 5. So you could plug that 5 in there. So for every 2 women, there's 5 men. For this next one, it tells us up above, it says set up the proportion and solve if 1 gallon equals 128 ounces. So it says if whiteout is $1.99 for 0.7 ounces, how much would it cost to buy a gallon? So for this one, we need to set up our proportion again. So we'd say $1.99, and we know that that's per 0.7 ounces. So we'd write that in there, equals. Now we don't know, we want to find out how much it would cost to buy a gallon. So for this one, we're going to say x over 128. And when we do that, we know that the 128 again was our ounces that we'd have per gallon. So again, we're just going to cross multiply to solve for x, and in this case, x is already at the top, so I really just need to multiply those two, which is going to give me 254.7, and that's going to be divided by our 0.7. So that's going to give me my answer of $363.9 per gallon. On the next one, we know that we have chapstick for $1.19, and that's for 0.15 ounces, and it wants to know how much would it cost to buy a gallon. So again, we're going to set up our proportion. So this time we have that the chapstick is $1.19 per 0.15 ounces. And we're going to set that equal to, again, we're not sure, but we know that we have, again, 128, because it told us up there, 128 ounces per gallon. So again, we're going to solve for this, and x is at the top, so again, we just need to cross multiply there. So we would get 119 times 128 would give us equal $152.3. And we're going to divide that by our 0.15 gallons. Oops. Divide that by our 0.15. So we are going to find when we take 152.3 and we divide it by our 0.15, that's going to give us a total of per gallon. These next few we're going to do are solving quadratics. So you're going to do the same thing. You're still going to cross multiply just like we did on the last ones. So I'll show our little arrows on here. We're cross multiplying. And then you're just going to set up what you have. So for this first one, we have x plus 7 times x minus 2. And then on this side, we have equals 36. So when we multiply these, we're going to have to set these up. So we've got x squared, that's my two x's multiplied, plus 7x minus 2x would be 5x minus 7 times negative 2 would be 14, and we set that equal to 36. Okay, now we want to be able to factor this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my 36 to this side and set it equal to 0. So I say minus 36 minus 36, and my new value becomes x squared plus 5x minus 50, because we had minus 36 from negative 14, equals 0. And when we factor that out, hopefully we can see here, we've got 50. So we're going to know what two values would I multiply together to equal 50, and also be able to add together to equal 5. So I know from this, since this comes out to a positive 5, I must have a negative and a positive multiplied together, and I also want this to still be a positive 5. So I know that 10 times 5 equals 50, and to get this positive 5, I know that it must be x plus 10, and I could factor out our x minus 5, because we know we want this to be negative 50, but this would still give us our positive 5 here. So our actual x values, if we solve for them, would be x equals negative 10 and x equals 5. Same thing on this next one. Whoops, I'm going to change my ink color. Same thing on this next one. We're going to again cross multiply. So 9 times 5 would be 45. And we're going to set that equal to this side when we cross multiply. So we get our x plus 5 times x plus 1. So when we solve for that, we'd have 45 equals x squared plus 5x plus 1x would give you 6x, plus 5 times 1 would be 5. And then again, we want to get this 45 over to this side so we can set this equal to 0. So I'm going to say minus 45 minus 45. And now we have x squared plus 6x minus 40 equals 0. So again, we've got to factor this out. So we should get, we can see again, we've got a negative 40 but a positive 6. So again, 10 times 4 would give us 40 and would also give us the 6 value here. So we know that our answer should be x plus 10, and then the other part should be x minus 4. And when we equals 0. So when we pull those out, we'd get x equals negative 10 and x equals 4 for that portion. All right, for this last one, we have an x already in the numerator here. So really to solve for this, I've just got to cross multiply my 5 over. So for that, I would end up with x equals 5x plus 4 divided by our 2x plus 8. Okay, so we want to solve for x, and I know I've got this. So I can see here that if I pull out, factor out a 2, then that would leave me with 5x plus